April 22nd, 2026. Deep in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Sinaloa, Mexico, Black Hawk helicopters are cutting through the morning air. Hundreds of federal soldiers, Army, Navy, National Guard, are moving through the rugged terrain by air and by land. Radio frequencies are crackling. Cartel sicarios on the mountain ridges are whispering warnings to each other in hushed, urgent tones. And somewhere in those mountains is an 80-year-old man. Not just any man, the last surviving old guard boss of the most powerful drug cartel in history. A man who has slipped through the fingers of the Mexican military at least 10 times since 2011. A man the US government wants so badly they're offering $5 million just for information on his whereabouts. Hours earlier, cartel radio frequencies lit up with a message that sent shockwaves across Sinaloa. Green, white, yellow, red. Every branch of law enforcement waiting for El Guano. Then silence. The Defense Ministry issued a statement. Arrests were made, but El Guano was not among them. How does an octogenarian drug lord, surrounded by the full force of the Mexican military, Black Hawk helicopters overhead, soldiers on every ridge, simply disappear? This is the story of Aureliano El Guano Guzmán Loera, the brother who stayed in the shadows while El Chapo became the most wanted man on earth. The man who built an empire in the mountains while the world looked the other way. And the man who, to this day, has never spent a single night in a prison cell. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how he did it. And you will not believe how close they came to catching him. To understand how Aureliano Guzmán Loera became the ghost that no government can catch, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to a tiny, remote village nestled deep in the mountains of Sinaloa called La Tuna, Badiraguato. If that name sounds familiar, it should. La Tuna is the same village where Joaquin El Chapo Guzmán was born. The same mountains where the Guzmán family scratched out a living growing crops. And eventually, something far more profitable. It is the kind of place that does not appear on most maps. The kind of place where the Mexican government's authority has always been more of a suggestion than a reality. The kind of place where loyalty runs deeper than law. And it is here, in this isolated corner of the Sierra Madre Occidental, that Aureliano Guzmán Loera was born. Somewhere around 1945 or 1946, which means something most people do not realize. El Guano is actually older than El Chapo. He is the elder brother. El Chapo, the man who once commanded the most powerful drug trafficking organization on the planet, was in many ways the younger sibling looking up. The Guzmán Loera family grew up poor, the children of Emilio Guzmán Bustillos and Maria Consuelo Loera Perez. Their father was officially a cattle rancher, but in the mountains of Sinaloa in those years, that description covered a great many things. The land around Badiraguato was, and still is, part of what is known as the Golden Triangle, the region where Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua meet. A remote highland that has been the heart of Mexican drug cultivation for over a century. Poppy fields, marijuana fields, hidden laboratories tucked into canyon walls. Growing up in that environment did not leave many options, and the Guzmán brothers, all of them, chose the same path. But here is what made Aureliano different from his younger brother, almost from the beginning. He chose obscurity. While Joaquin clawed his way up through the Guadalajara cartel in the 1980s, building connections, building a reputation, making enemies, making headlines, Aureliano stayed in the mountains. He did not seek fame. He did not seek power in the traditional sense. He sought control of the one place he understood completely, his own backyard. Through the 1990s and 2000s, as Joaquin El Chapo Guzmán rose to become arguably the most powerful drug lord the world had ever seen, Aureliano operated in his shadow. And that shadow was protective in ways that are hard to overstate. While the DEA, the Mexican military, Interpol, and every major law enforcement agency on the planet were focused on El Chapo, tracking his phone calls, following his associates, bribing officials for information, orchestrating elaborate sting operations. Nobody was paying much attention to the quiet older brother running things in the mountains. A retired Mexican Army colonel, interviewed by journalist Oscar Balderas for Milenio, put it plainly: authorities spent years without even knowing that El Guano had high-level responsibilities within the cartel. El Chapo's enormous shadow allowed his brother to maintain a profile so low he was practically invisible to the intelligence apparatus hunting the Sinaloa cartel. This was not an accident. This was strategy. While El Chapo built tunnels under the US border, ran a global trafficking empire worth billions, bribed the most powerful officials in Mexico, and eventually made the Forbes list of the world's wealthiest people, Aureliano was doing something simpler and, in the long run, something more durable. He was building a kingdom in the mountains, not a kingdom of skyscrapers or private jets, a kingdom of poppy fields, of marijuana cultivation, of dirt roads he knew by heart, and mountain passes that federal soldiers could not navigate without a guide. According to the U.S. State Department's own documentation, El Guano's drug trafficking organization controls smuggling routes from Sinaloa through Sonora and directly into the United States. His organization is responsible for cultivating and producing poppy, marijuana, heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine. The main source of income, large-scale cultivation of marijuana and poppy fields in the very Sierra Madre mountain range where he was born and raised. His operation is, in many ways, old school. And in the world of modern drug trafficking, old school has proven remarkably difficult to dismantle. For decades, El Guano's role in the cartel remained deliberately secondary. He managed the mountains. He protected the poppy fields. He controlled Badiraguato. He was important, but he was content to let his brother be the face, the story, the legend. Then El Chapo got arrested for the last time, January 8, 2016. Mexican Marines captured Joaquin Guzmán Loera in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. A little over a year later, on January 19, 2017, he was extradited to the United States. And just like that, the man whose shadow had protected Aureliano for decades was gone. Behind the walls of a maximum security prison in Colorado, everything changed. Mexican military investigations found something significant in the power vacuum left by El Chapo's arrest. Aureliano Guzmán Loera had stepped forward, not into the national spotlight, not into the boardrooms of Culiacan, but into command, local, mountain, absolute command of Sinaloa cartel activity in Badiraguato. And he did it on his own terms. Reports from that period note that after El Chapo's final recapture, El Guano broke the truces his brother had previously negotiated with rival cells. He did not care about diplomacy. He did not care about the big picture politics of the cartel. He cared about the mountains. And he was willing to fight, brutally, to keep them. Mexican authorities linked him to an ambush that left 5 soldiers dead. Then, in October 2016, federal forces launched a fierce manhunt after El Guano allegedly attacked a military convoy with grenades. Thousands of troops flooded into Sinaloa. And yet, somehow, he disappeared back into the Sierra. It was a pattern that would define the next decade of his life. By 2019, the United States had seen enough. On November 13th of that year, a federal grand jury in Arizona returned a superseding indictment against Aureliano Guzmán Loera, charging him with 4 counts related to an international conspiracy to distribute heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. Then on February 19, 2020, a second grand jury in Arizona piled on additional charges. In November 2021, the U.S. Department of State went public with a formal wanted notice and a reward: $5 million for information leading to his arrest and conviction. $5 million. That is not a courtesy notice. That is the price tag of someone who has become a genuine national security concern for the United States. But here is the thing about El Guano. He was still in the mountains, and the mountains did not care about indictments. According to the retired colonel interviewed by Milenio, Mexican federal authorities had attempted to arrest El Guano at least 8 times since 2011. By 2026, that number would climb to at least 10 confirmed attempts. 10 operations. 10 times with the full force of the Mexican military, with helicopters and convoys and special forces, and 10 times the same result. El Guano slips into the mountains and vanishes. When federal forces move into the Golden Triangle region, they face a terrain problem that no amount of military hardware fully solves. The Sierra Madre Occidental is not the kind of mountain range you can dominate with helicopters alone. The valleys are deep and narrow. The forest cover is dense. The villages are small, scattered, and reachable only by roads that a single pickup truck can block. Satellite imagery has limited use when the man you are hunting has spent 80 years memorizing every trail, every cave, every seasonal creek bed in the region. El Guano has the home field advantage in the most complete sense imaginable. But terrain alone does not explain 10 failed operations. What makes El Guano almost impossible to catch is what he has built around himself over decades: a web of fierce, unconditional loyalty. His armed faction is called the Gente del Guano. His fighters wear that abbreviation on their tactical vests with pride. On social media, they post images of themselves in full military-style camouflage, carrying Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifles, AK-47s, M16s, and AR-15. They operate explosive drones. They drive armored vehicles. They deploy spike strips on mountain roads to halt any approaching convoy. These are not desperate men with pistols. This is a private army, equipped to stop a military operation. And they have done exactly that repeatedly. But what sets El Guano's organization apart is not just firepower. It is the willingness of his most trusted men to sacrifice themselves so he can escape. The July 2024 operation makes this point with brutal clarity. On the morning of July 8, 2024, at approximately 11:50 in the morning, Mexican Army and National Guard forces were conducting a high-value operation in the Sierra Madre Occidental. They had intelligence on El Guano's location. They were closing in and running alongside him, literally sprinting through the mountain terrain, was his top security chief, Luis Rivera Ochoa, known by his alias LR8. LR8 faced a calculation in those 8 critical minutes. He could keep running. But El Guano was 79 years old. His steps were slower. If they kept running together, there was a real chance soldiers would catch them both, or LR8 could stop, surrender, take the arrest, the extradition, the federal prison in the United States, and in doing so, buy his boss the time he needed to disappear into the mountains one more time. LR8 surrendered. He handed himself over to Mexican federal forces, knowing full well what that meant for his own future, so that the old man he served could vanish into the Sierra. That is not just loyalty. That is a level of devotion, or fear, or both, that goes beyond ordinary cartel dynamics, and LR8 was not alone. In November 2022, when authorities received a tip about cartel activity near Culiacan and launched an operation that brought them close to El Guano, 5 bodyguards were arrested. Bodyguards who had been wearing tactical vests with fake Marines patches sewn onto them, impersonating Mexican Navy personnel to move freely through the area. El Guano himself was nowhere to be found. 5 men willing to impersonate Marines, a crime that carries enormous consequences in Mexico, to protect their boss. Now here is a dimension of El Guano's story that rarely gets told in the international press, and it might be the most important factor of all. In the mountains of Badiraguato and the surrounding communities of the Golden Triangle, Aureliano Guzmán Loera is not seen the way he is seen in a federal courtroom in Arizona. He is a native son. He was born there. His family has roots in that land going back generations, and over decades, he has cultivated, deliberately, a relationship with the local population that makes him incredibly difficult to hunt. On multiple occasions, locals have physically obstructed federal military convoys trying to move through communities where El Guano operates. People blocking roads, communities delaying soldiers, buying time, 30 minutes here, an hour there, that allows the old Chapo to disappear before the net closes. 30 minutes. That is all it takes. In that terrain, 30 minutes of delay can mean the difference between an arrest and another 10-year manhunt. The mountain communities are not simply afraid of El Guano. Many of them are economically dependent on the drug cultivation operations he oversees. The poppy fields and marijuana fields of the Sierra Madre are not abstract criminal enterprises to the people who live there. They are income. They are survival. And the man who controls those fields, who pays the wages, who provides the protection that the Mexican federal government has historically been unable or unwilling to offer. That man commands a particular kind of loyalty. Then came 2024, and everything inside the Sinaloa cartel began to fracture in ways that even El Guano could not fully control. Elmayo Zambada, the other co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel who had spent decades avoiding capture, was brought to the United States on July 25, 2024. Not through any Mexican military operation, but through what he later claimed was a kidnapping orchestrated by El Chapo's own son, Joaquin Guzmán López. El Mayo alleged that Guzmán López lured him onto a private plane under false pretenses and flew him directly to American authorities. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the cartel's internal order. With El Mayo in a New York jail cell, the cartel's 2 major factions, Los Chapitos and La Mayisa, erupted into open warfare on the streets of Culiacán. The city ground to a halt. More than 80 people died in the first weeks of fighting, and El Guano was right in the middle of it. His position in this war is complicated by personal history. El Guano and his nephews, Los Chapitos, the sons of his own brother, had a tense relationship for years. There were reports of hostility. After El Chapo's extradition, as Los Chapitos tried to assert control over the broader cartel, they clashed with their uncle over territories and routes. For a period, it seemed like a truce had been reached. Reportedly, after the death of their shared mother, late in 2023. But the peace did not hold. When El Mayo's capture broke open the cartel war, El Guano made his choice. According to a list compiled by Mexico's own Ministry of National Defense, El Guano sided with La Mayisa, El Mayo's faction, against his own nephews. He reportedly assembled a group of fighters he branded El Cartel del Guano, deploying them in the brutal internal conflict tearing Sinaloa apart. Think about what that means. An 80-year-old man hiding in the mountains to avoid federal capture, simultaneously managing a drug production empire and fighting a civil war against his own brother's children. By December 2025, the Mexican Navy deployed to the mountainous region near Tamazula de Victoria, Durango, helicopter-supported, intelligence-driven, coordinated with U.S. agencies. The operation's objective was clear: Aureliano Guzmán Loera. He was not there. Or he was not there anymore by the time they arrived. Which brings us back to that morning in April 2026. By the time Black Hawk helicopters began circling the Golden Triangle region on the morning of April 22nd, the intelligence picture had been building for months. American agencies, the CIA, ICE, Homeland Security investigations, had been feeding intelligence to Mexican counterparts in what officials described as a joint effort. The airport in Culiacan was placed under heightened security. Helicopters swept the mountain ridges. Federal forces came in by air and by land. On cartel radio frequencies, the warnings flew immediately. Sicarios on the ridges were transmitting to each other in real time. Every branch of law enforcement was in the mountains, and they were looking for El Guano. The radio chatter was leaked to social media within hours. Even as soldiers were moving through the terrain, the world was watching on their phones. Then came the reports, first from local media, then national outlets, then picked up internationally. El Guano had been captured. Mexico's security minister held a press conference. He confirmed the operation. He confirmed there were detainees. He said carefully that the arrest of Aureliano Guzmán Loera had not yet been confirmed. And by late afternoon, the defense ministry was more direct. El Guano was not among those detained. He had done it again. But what the April 22nd operation failed to accomplish in the mountains, a follow-up operation in Durango would partially address. Within days, soldiers arrested 10 members of El Guano's organization in Tamazula. Among them, his right-hand man and most trusted bodyguard, his financial and logistics operator, his security chief. 10 arrests, his inner circle gutted. And El Guano, gone. Again. So how? How does any human being, let alone an 80-year-old man, survive 10 military operations spanning 15 years? The answer comes down to several interlocking realities that, taken together, make El Guano one of the most elusive figures in the history of organized crime. The first is terrain mastery. El Guano has spent his entire 8 decades of life in the Sierra Madre Occidental. He knows paths that do not appear on any map. He knows which ridges can be seen from approaching helicopters and which valleys are invisible from the air. He has a lifetime of intimate knowledge about this landscape that no military operation, however sophisticated, can replicate quickly. The second is the sacrifice of loyal subordinates. El Guano has built an organization where key lieutenants are prepared, apparently willingly, to surrender themselves to federal forces in order to buy their boss time to escape. Whatever its source, it is real, and it has worked repeatedly. The third is community protection. The local population of the communities where El Guano operates functions, in many cases, as a passive early warning and delay system. Communities slow operations down. They create friction. And in mountain terrain, friction means time. Time means escape. The fourth is the warning network. El Guano's organization monitors federal communications and troop movements in real time. By the time federal forces move into position, his people already know. The April 2026 operation demonstrated this live. Cartel radio frequencies were broadcasting the operation's details faster than Mexican government officials could verify or deny anything. The fifth, and perhaps most important of all, is the low profile. For decades, El Guano's obscurity was his protection. He does not throw parties. He does not travel in large conspicuous convoys through populated areas. He moves through the mountains he has known his whole life, surrounded by men who would go to prison for him. He is, in the fullest sense, a creature of the Sierra. As of April 2026, Aureliano El Guano Guzmán Loera is approximately 80 years old. He has outlived one brother who was murdered in prison in 2004. He has watched another brother spend the rest of his life in a Supermax facility in Colorado. He has navigated the complete collapse of the Sinaloa cartel's leadership structure. El Chapo imprisoned, El Mayo imprisoned, Los Chapitos in custody or in hiding, the cartel at war with itself. And through all of it, he has remained free. Every day that passes, El Guano is closer to dying free than to living in a prison cell. He has now taken the place in Mexican criminal history that El Mayo Zambada once occupied, the elderly capo that no one could catch, the last man standing from an entire generation of Sinaloa cartel leadership that has otherwise been imprisoned, extradited, or killed. The operations will continue. The helicopters will fly over the Sierra again. Soldiers will move through mountain passes at dawn. Cartel radios will crackle with warnings. And somewhere in those mountains, in the same terrain where he was born, where he grew up, where he built everything he has, an old man will be watching, waiting, moving when he needs to move, disappearing when he needs to disappear. The ghost who was never found.